Awesome. Hi, guys. Welcome to another Product School Talk. We have a ton of people out there joining us today, so really excited for that. Thanks for being here. As many of you know, we teach product management courses as well as coding and data, so you'll find more information on our website at productschool.com. I'm really excited about today's session because we have a very special guest with us. Her name is Nan Munga. She is head of product for global marketplace pricing at Amazon. And prior to Amazon, she worked in multiple product positions, including Expedia, Microsoft, and Zynga. And she has a ton of experience that she's here to share with you. So hi, Nan, welcome. How are you doing today?
Pretty good. So excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, we're really happy to have you here. Can you tell us a little bit more about your background and how you got into product management?
Yeah, absolutely. So I studied computer engineering in school. And honestly, me getting into product management was completely accidental. So I was interviewing with Microsoft for a deposition, and I think during the interview, they realized somehow I was a better fit for a product management role. They asked me, hey, would you like to be a PM? I was like, yeah, why not? And that's how I got into product management. So completely accidental. And, but I really, like when I got into it, when I learned more about it after getting the job offer, I thought like this was it. Like this seemed really interesting, and I've been doing that ever since. And really enjoying every single day, even now. So
awesome. Well, I know you brought some insights that you'd like to share with everybody today. So before she goes into that, I'd like to let everyone know we're going to kind of open the floor for Q&A after. So it'll be an AMA session following her talk. So the floor is yours.
all right. So first of all, I wanted to call out that I did not prepare any formal slides for this. I want this to be very conversational. So, feel free to stop me anytime, ask me examples, questions, let's just, do this as a conversation instead of like, very one-way kind of talk. So anyway, to give you a little bit background, as you guys might know that I have been in product management for over 10 years. And as a result of that, I have a chance to, mentor many interns and talk to a lot of early stage product managers. And they always ask me for advice on like, hey, how should I, prepare myself to be a successful product manager and so on. And one of the advice that I give them is like really, really think about one thing, which is the launch of a product, right? So if there's anything I've learned in my career, the most important point of your product is actually when you launch. It is literally the culmination of all your hard work. Like you have been doing all the user research, gathering requirements, user experience design, development, testing, and all of that, comes to a moment of truth, which is when you launch and customers actually get to use your product. And that's when you learn a ton about, whether you did all things right and, how you can improve upon it and so on. You truly learn whether you solve the customer problem or not, things that, you would not learn from, customer research or anything like that. And in the end, it's all about creating value for the customer. And that's what you are measuring when you launch, whether you actually create value for them, you solve a tangible problem that they're facing. So today's talk, I wanted to kind of focus on 3 lessons that I've learned myself as a product manager while launching various products and how to get better at it over time. So I'm going to talk through them. The number 1 is launch as much as you can, and we'll talk about that. The second lesson is always think about one-way doors versus two-way doors when you're launching. And lastly, when you're launching, always have a plan, right? And they might seem like, they're not super rocket sciencey, but I think as I talk through them, I'll try to point out like, the common gotchas people have when they're launching and things that we easily miss or don't consider. So coming to the first lesson, it's like launch as much as you can, right? So I feel as a product manager, I learned the most in my career when I launched, right? And, going through the cycle of, creating product, launching, getting feedback and building the next product to be better and launching and so on and so forth. So I think we all human beings learn better when we do pattern matching and to, create as many patterns as possible for launching. That's where you want to make sure that launching consistently and you're not waiting for years and years designing this perfect product, but you're getting feedback from the customers in the meantime by breaking it down into tangible steps and developing your spidey sense over time of what is working, what is not working. So to give you an example, let's say we're talking about a product such as Tesla, which aspires to be 100% automatically driven car one day. So yes, they can totally wait for 4 years, 5 years it takes to make a fully automated car, or they can start breaking this functionality down. Let's say the first version does automatic parking, the second version does automatic cruise control on freeway. So by breaking it down, incrementally launching, you learn so much about the customer. You get to validate your hypothesis and make the product better over time. One thing to keep in mind is as you're launching, it is the purpose is not just to launch and just like, hey, figure it out as you go. It's always important to have a North Star plan. Where do you want to be in like 1 or 2 years from now, or 3 to 5 years from now? And working backwards from there to see what are the incremental products I can launch to help me build towards that vision, and what are the risky hypotheses about customers that I need to validate for my 4 or 5 year vision to be successful. So this is what the lesson is all about. Launch incrementally, launch a lot, and learn from every launch, and get better over time. And this will help you develop that spidey sense that everybody talks about when they talk about product management. So that is, yeah, go on.
Oh, awesome. Well, speaking of launch, we just had one question coming in from Additive based on launching. So can you give an example of 5 questions every PM must answer before launch?
Yeah, so I think actually, one of the points that I'm going to talk about will come to that. So let me take a note of this question. If it doesn't get answered through my talk, we'll come back to it. Yeah. The second thing I wanted to talk about, and actually it's one of the 5 things that you should think about when you're launching, is beware of one-way and two-way doors. In product management, we are actually in a very high judgment jobs. All we're doing all day long is making decisions and making sure we are making progress and making decisions for the customer experience all the time. So as we make decisions, we don't always have all the data that's available to us, and that's where the concept of one-way and two-way doors come in. A one-way door is a product decision that is literally very painful to reverse back in time, and will cause a lot of customer angst or unhappiness or pain to roll back. A two-way door is where rolling back something is much easier, and you can always reverse your decision if you learn something new about the customer. To give an example, a one-way door will be, let's say you're pricing a boxed product that will be sold through a retail store. Obviously, in software, it doesn't happen very often, but if you're a product manager on a box store that customer's going to buy, and if you decide to change back how your pricing is going to change, it's really painful because some people have already bought your product. How are you going to reach them? How are you going to give them the discount that you're giving to other people? So it becomes a very considered decision that you must have a lot of information to make. On the other hand, like let's say you're a product manager on Gmail and you're launching a feature that highlights the your messages from, let's say, your friends. If you mess up, you can always release an update the next day, or you can roll back the feature very easily, or message quite easily to this user saying, hey, this feature will be back again in like 3 hours or something, right? So it's a two-way door. You can roll back your decisions without causing a lot of pain to the customer and so on. So I think my advice here will be, as you're launching, think about how to create more two-way doors, things that you can roll back and learn from. So you're not caught up in this, way of like, hey, I have to have a lot of data. I have to have 90% data to make this decision. And you can actually kind of make a decision, move forward with 70% data and learn from the customers instead of, spending enormous amount of time and missing the window of opportunity as you're launching the product. So anyway, so that's about my, advice number 2. Some of the examples of how you can create two-way doors is like how you can launch a product as a test. For example, if you're trying to redo your pricing, could you do that as like a limited time promotion? Like, hey, for limited time only, you have this promotion, and if it works well, make it perpetual. Or do web-based tests instead of deploying a change to a mobile app that takes multiple weeks before it gets to the customer's hand, in case you want to roll back a feature that was already installed by the customer. So these are a few examples of how you can create two-way doors and reduce your risk as you're launching. All right, so number 3, again, very relevant to the 5 questions about like what things you'll make sure when you're launching is always have a plan, right? Because a lot of times when I was launching, I was like, yeah, launch done, victory, awesome, right? And I can finally relax and take a little break because I've been working so hard. But too bad, as product managers, we don't have that luxury. So one of the biggest mistakes I feel the newbie product managers make is, not having a plan for post-launch, right? So one of the things you need to make sure before launch is, first of all, what you're expecting to learn from the launch. What metrics will you be collecting from this launch? Is that reporting ready? Are those metrics available to you? Are they bug-free? And then let's say, and almost do like a scenario analysis, like, okay, if this goes really well and I see the metrics that I'm expecting, what will I do next? What will I double down on? Or if I see metrics that are really bad, what is my plan to fix it? How am I going to pivot? What kind of options do I have? So to give an example, when I was a product manager in Zynga, I launched my first web game. And one of the things I did not consider is that, hey, after I launch this game, customers going to go through all these levels and they're going to run out of content really soon. And sure enough, it happened, and we were not ready for the new content pack, new levels for them to go play, and we would have lost all these players. So here's where, I could have been better planned and prepared for, like, hey, I expect customers to play through all the content in 2 days. In 2 days, I must be able to launch new content and be ready for this V2, V3, V4 of my product, right? So this is an example to kind of make it more tangible. In this case, you're super lucky. My design team came through, and we had a fire drill, but thankfully we managed not to lose any users or revenue. But this is an example of the kind of mistakes we end up making, not being prepared for the V2, what happens next. And this is where you have to think about, what is it I'm trying to learn from this launch? What metrics do I want to have? And what is my plan if I see metrics, in case one, best case scenario, normal case scenario, worst case scenario, what am I going to do? Right? So basically always having a plan. So anyway, that's all the 3 lessons that I had that I've learned from my own experience. To run it all back up, I think if I have to do, the list of like, what are the 5 things I'll make sure, I have thought through. One is definitely, what do I expect from the launch? What metrics will I measure? And what outcomes will I, do if things turn out in a certain way? And, obviously, when you think about the launch, thinking about, do you have your, for example, development team ready to act on it if there are bugs and whatnot? So, having a contingency plan. So what can go wrong? And do I have a contingency plan for all of them? The third thing I would say is, making sure you have a strong marketing plan. Just because you launched, right, doesn't mean customers going to adopt it. So how are you going to think through a very, good marketing plan? Like, are you going to do email-based marketing? Are you going to reach out to certain customers and, have them adopt, your beta customers? And so that's another lesson. And for some of us who work in a very B2B, business to business products, we also have the luxury of having an amazing sales force. But with that comes a responsibility of making sure your sales force is trained and knows that this is rolling out. So when they talk to the customers, they're not surprised or they don't know how to message your product incorrectly. So making sure, your sales team is ready, is aware and trained to go through with this, right? So I think those are the few things I can think through the top of my head. On what I think about, when I think about launching a product. I hope that was helpful. And if there are any other questions, I would love to hear, your thoughts and questions.
Awesome. Thanks for going through all of that with us. There are quite a few questions that are coming through, so I'm going to search through them right now and find a good one to bring up for you. So here's one from Angid. How, as a product manager, do you balance between intuition and spending time trying to gather more data?
Yeah, I think that is a great question, because I think a lot of time, data is the reason to believe, but intuition is like, because it's so hard to explain, right? How do you make decisions? And as said, as product managers, our decision is to make a lot of decisions all the time, right? So I think, how do you balance between that? I think I come back to kind of, developing intuition, but backing it up with user insights and data and behaviors. But then when you don't have that, a lot of times you have the intuition, but you can't explain it through data. There are 2 ways you have. One is, you go collect more data, or second, what you do is what I mentioned, like, think about what is the 2-way door here? Could I come back if I'm wrong? What if I go wrong? What are the consequences? And can I turn it back? So I think that's how I will balance. Like sometimes it's really hard to get data, the opportunity might pass. And then, thinking through the product design in a way that you can always turn back and not waiting for getting 100% of data if that's going to take too long.
Right, absolutely. And here, speaking of two-way doors and one-way doors, we have another question related to that. So this is from Zane. Is the primary difference between one-way doors versus two-way doors seen between traditional retail versus software tech, like your examples, or are there examples of each across both environments?
Yeah, no, I think the examples of each one of them, even like, for example, a big product launch, let's say Amazon launching a phone, is pretty much a one-way door. You don't get that kind of opportunity as a big company to launch your products multiple times. Obviously, startups have a lot more luxury in that case. So think about like how big your company is, how big your user base is. The bigger your user base is, typically, if you launch a product to them, is going to affect so many lives that it tends to be more one-way doors, right? So I think big company, big user base, a B2B scenario are typically the examples of where one-way doors happen more often than not, right? Consumer scenarios, small startups, small user base is typically where you have the luxury of turning back things without causing a lot of pain. So I think that is another framework to think about when you think about one-way door and two-way doors.
Right, definitely. I think it froze for a second. Sorry about that. Making sure you can hear me again. I am going to pull another question here as well. So here, see, we have so many coming through. These are really good. So
Yeah.
Great advice. So here, this is from Tijmani. Any advice for new PM, like especially the first PM at a very small company?
Yeah, definitely. So I think this is advice I give to like interns as well as new product managers, like get to your first launch as soon as you can, right? A lot of times, you might feel like, hey, I'm not ready, or, I don't own anything big, or, I can't, launch because it depends on so many different things. Think about you can create like small experiments to learn more about your user behavior and test out the entire cycle of going from, user research to requirements to development, testing and all that, and going through the cycle. Because I think it helps you develop appreciation for a full cycle that feeds back into the next time you're going through the same cycle, right? So as you're a new product manager, think about the smallest things you can launch and learn from. Obviously, don't launch just for the sake of it, right? It has to have a hypothesis that you're trying to confirm through launch, and learn from it and go through the cycle of, okay, now that I have launched, here's how I'm going to analyze the data, here's how I'm going to work towards a V2, and go through the cycle over and over again. So that is the advice I give. Don't be constrained that I'm an intern and I only have 3 months, I can't launch anything, it's going to take me so much time. Think about how you can fasten the cycle, because it fastens your cycle of learning as a product manager.
Yeah, definitely really good advice. And then speaking of larger companies, this question is from Anish. What should a product manager at a company like Amazon be focusing on in their first 100 days?
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a great question. And having gone through my first 100 days recently, I think I'll tell you from my experience. So, like bigger companies, especially companies like Amazon, especially because I'm in B2B, I spent a lot of my first 100 days understanding the business, because it was so much more complex than any of the businesses I've, kind of led before. So I think understanding the business, understanding how things work in the sense, what is the product that we are selling? What is the value proposition? How does it affect customer life and all that? Second thing, which is the most important thing, is talking to your customers. So within the first 1 month, I set up one-on-one interviews with sellers. So I work on the marketplace side where I work with the sellers who sell on Amazon. So setting up time with them, understanding what they do, how Amazon or whatever company you're in changes your life or affects them, what pain points they have, to kind of form a perspective of what your users are like and what problems they're facing. And don't limit yourself to just Amazon, like, hey, how does Amazon or whatever company I work for changes your life? Like, hey, what are your goals as a business? What makes you successful in general? Because I think the broader perspective you have about your customer's life, you might learn so much more. For example, when I was talking to my sellers, I was like, hey, I want to not only understand how you interact with Amazon, but tell me about your supply chain. Tell me about the parts that don't get affected by Amazon today, but they might be impacted tomorrow. Maybe I can invent something that can help you in other parts of your life, which are not solved by our solutions yet. So understanding the business, understanding the users, getting to know, your teammates, obviously, and the strengths and weaknesses they have, and as we have as a business. I think those are the few things that I focused on when I first joined Amazon.
Awesome. Okay, we have a lot more, so I'm going to try to get through this for you. Let's see. Here, what advice would you give for planning or gathering data for non-web-based products?
Non-web-based products. Yeah, that's super interesting. So I have worked in Microsoft where I worked on Office, which is a box product at that point of time before it became Office 365. So I'm just trying to think from that experience. So first of all, even though we had a non-web-based product, that doesn't mean you cannot, collect usage metrics. So always think of like devising system that you can still collect usage metrics that come back to you in some way. So anyway, but taking a higher level view of data. So there are two kind of data you can always get. One is qualitative, one is quantitative, right? Mm-hmm. Qualitative is like, you can talk to the users directly and understand, like, hey, how do you use this product? How does it solve your life, whatever problem that you have? Or how does it fit into your work and your daily life and so on? So I think talking to users and, building that relationship with some of your users directly, so you can just pick up the phone and call them, hey, we lost this, what is your experience and all that. So that's one. The second is, if you have a product which is not web based but is an app, always be reading all the reviews. You will be surprised how much you can gain by reading all the reviews of your apps or whatever product you're launching through these kind of channels. The third is, think about how you can build pipelines, data pipelines, so you can still get quantitative data on how they're actually using the product, so that you can form hypotheses based on their usage and see what product features you expected to be super used and not as well used, and is that matching your hypothesis? So those are the ways I think about when I think about user data: qualitative and quantitative, and thinking of different channels that you can get it from, whether it's through reviews, whether it's directly talking to the customers, whether maybe it's doing surveys and sending out mass emails and surveys on specific questions and so on.
Okay. Right, great. Yeah, this question is from Dive. What do you recommend doing after a failed product?
Right. I think that is the most interesting, question, today, I feel. So yeah, products fail, right? And I think, first of all, knowing that it failed, right? And for that, you have to know what you expected and what did not happen. So there are multiple ways you can go about it. But I think it starts with understanding why it failed, right? So it failed because there was a critical bug. Is there something we can quite easily fix? Um, or it failed for a very fundamental reason that it actually did not solve the customer problem, right? So if it failed for the first reason, then you know what you need to fix, incrementally making your product better, releasing it V1.1, V1.2, and making those things better. Those are for the smaller issues that you can understand and kind of fix very easily through software. The other thing that can happen is like, well, your product failed because of a very fundamental reason that it did not solve the customer problem. And there's a bigger customer insight that we missed or you missed, because of, sorry, in a meeting right now. Sorry, guys, I booked a conference room here and then someone walked in. Yeah, so if it failed for a very fundamental reason, I think then you need to reevaluate where you want to be. So there are a few things you can do. We can pivot your product, or literally do one of the hardest things that many product managers have done, and that's actually the strength of a product manager. Admit your mistake, shut down the product, and work on something different, solve a different problem. And yeah, I would, a lot of times we have confirmation bias, like, hey, but I really worked on it. It can be solved. Like, think about very objectively. Is this really something that you want to double down on, even when it fails? Or is it a better path to focus on a different problem? And I think that's the hardest decision to make.
Right, absolutely. Imagine. We have time for just a couple more questions. So let's see here.
Yeah.
Here's one from Miriam. What if you come in to manage a product that's already launched? How do you justify all the changes that you would propose? Like, where would you even start?
Do you mind repeating that question one more time?
Sure. What if you're coming in to manage a product that's already launched? So, and you want to make changes to that? How would you justify those changes, and where would you start to propose them?
Yeah, so I think I find it weird that you have to justify changes, because I think the reason you're making changes is because there's some customer problem or some reason for you to even have those changes, right? For example, the reason you're suggesting changes is not because you came in and you're like, wow, I don't like the UI, it could be different. The reason you're suggesting changes is you heard from customers that this is not meeting my needs. It needs to do X, Y, and Z, or improve here, or there's something broken that is causing me pain, right? So I
Right.
think that those are the reasons that you start from to suggest those changes, and that helps you justify those changes, right? So that's one. The second reason is because these are incremental changes, right? The one that I gave you example for. The second is like, well, you inherit a product and you're like, no, actually this can be so much better, and I have a 3-year vision for it where I want to take it from here to there. So I think then how you can start is like, hey, here's a North Star vision. Here we think this product can be in 3 years, and here are the reasons I believe it will help customers, and we can actually get there because we have the competency, or whatever the reason may be. And then working backwards from there to say, hey, this is what we should be doing right now to reach there. And that justifies your process of like, hey, I need to make a change because it's a step towards that direction, or I want to make a change because it actually addresses a customer feedback or a pain point I have learned about. Right. So it's not the other way around where like, hey, I like this feature, I should build it. And here's, how I'm finding ways to justify it. It actually has to start with the customer and the justification.
Right. No, that's perfect, and that actually answers another question from Kevin, I believe, which was how far in advance should you plan your North Star? Which you mentioned 3 years is a good time
Yeah.
frame for that. So perfect. I'm going to take one last question. If you could recommend
Mhm.
some reading resources that you would recommend for folks trying to change from engineering into product management, or
From engineering into product management. Wow, there are actually a ton of books, and honestly, like I don't remember all the names right now. But because I get asked this question so often, I have created a blog post on this. I don't know how I can share this. Maybe I can send it over to you, and as a post talk resources, you can share it with the
sure, sure.
folks who are listening in. Yeah, but there's a ton of books out there that you can read and learn from about product management, the basics, as well as things that you can learn to be better as product managers by applying frameworks and so on.
Perfect, awesome. And on that question as well, we just recently launched the product book, and you can find that on Amazon. So
Awesome.
we have one of those too. So before we go, if you could just give some final advice to aspiring product managers.
Yeah, so I think the most important advice I give to can even offer to any product manager is like be customer obsessed. That is number one. Like you have to be customer obsessed, and everything has to start from the customer. And it's not to say like you ask, hey customer, what is your problem, and verbatim go solve that. But I think you have to develop like deep insight and empathy for your customer to understand what their problems are and solve them in a way which hopefully they would also not have imagined, right? One of my favorite quotes is like, if anybody asked, back in the days, like, hey, you are using horse right now, I think it's attributed to Henry Ford. They would have said like, yeah, I just want a faster horse. Nobody would have imagined a car. So it's your job as a product manager to invent on behalf of the customer by understanding their problem. It's not to say you verbatim take like, hey, I want this button to be here, and you put the button there. It's more like understanding, developing deep insights, empathy, and working backwards from there to invent on behalf of the customer. So that is my biggest advice I can give to anybody as a product manager. Yeah.
Thank you very much for your time today. I really appreciate you being here to answer all these questions and sharing your insights. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for the opportunity and talking to so many folks here.
Awesome. Thanks again, everybody, for joining us today as well. As I mentioned, we released the product book, so you can find that on Amazon. You can learn more about our courses at productschool.com, and we also are on Facebook and Twitter at Product School. So thanks again, and enjoy your day. Bye, guys.